Dear Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Future Talk 2020, live here in Bern, Switzerland. And also a warm welcome to all the distinguished guests watching us online from wherever you are in the world right now. We say good morning, good afternoon, or good evening. Yeah, the focus of our event, of our Future Talk in 2020, is the impact by education in the era of the new normal. We listen, we learn, we share. We support the sustainable development and the decade of action. We are action. My name is Dorothy Gelmer. I'm your host and moderator, and I'm looking forward to 3 fantastic days together with all of you. Yeah, in this very special year, our Future Talk was arranged as a hybrid dialogue event where our panelists, our experts, are joining us on-site here in Bern or via video call from all over the world. We have an action-packed program set up for today, tomorrow, and also for Friday. And for sure, we also have prepared a safety concept for all our guests here in Bern. For all of you taking part virtually on our event, we have prepared the hashtag FutureTalk2020. Please leave your comments, your statements by using this hashtag on social media and so on. And also, this is an interactive event. We want interaction with all of you. For example, you can use the comment function on YouTube to post your statements, your questions, and also our event app, which you can download on our website, futuretalk.org. And there you have the opportunity to post questions and statements, and I will hand some of them over to our panelists after the panel discussions. And we also have prepared a poll, which is on the one hand fun, and on the other hand, you can check your knowledge. We will reveal the questions today in the afternoon. Yeah, let's now start with the welcoming words, the opening of Future Talk. Let's begin with the association's president of Worlddidac, Dr. Stephen McKee.
Good day to all of our participants from around the world, and welcome to Future Talk. I'm Dr. Stephen McKee, the president of Worlddidac, and on behalf of Worlddidac, I would like to welcome you to this special hybrid digital edition of Future Talk. I would like to thank our supporters, the government of Switzerland, our embassy hosts from Finland, Canada, Korea, the mayor of Bern, and of course our topic sponsors from the UN agencies, UNESCO, UNIVOC, UNIDO, UNESCO UIL. As you may know, Future Talk is one of our recent initiatives to stimulate global dialogue about educational issues. This is the 3rd edition and is normally held live at our biannual event in Switzerland, which also includes a large exhibition. Due to the COVID pandemic, we've had to postpone the exhibition until next year, and perhaps we will see you there. But this year, we wanted to bring you Future Talk to our audience so that they could benefit from the dialogue during these times. As the situation has become worse recently in Europe, we've had to shift more towards a digital environment for this conference, and many of our speakers will be joining us from their countries online. This is part of what we're all facing during this time, and we must all adapt. We have to face the challenges brought about by the current crisis, but we also need to plan for the future. During these times, it is important to keep the dialogue going, to continue to have input, to discuss, to share, to network, and exchange ideas. Therefore, we felt it was our duty to continue with the conference agenda this year. The world has reached a major crossroads during 2020. It is changing, and so is education. This is perhaps the most challenging time in most people's lives and their careers. Change is happening that is both good and bad. Over 1 billion children have been affected by school closures and slowdowns worldwide. The fallout of this may be with us for many years due to loss of learning, loss of opportunities, and also delays in advancement. Major shifts are happening in the working population, with massive job losses and the collapse of certain types of industries such as the travel and hospitality sector. Many of those job losses may be permanent, and that will leave large numbers of people unemployed, and needing to be reskilled and reemployed for other industries. These are our challenges in education today and for tomorrow. This has motivated the world in seeking new solutions that might provide a more robust education system that can be more flexible during times of crisis. I encourage our members and viewers that this is the time to support global education in any way that you can. And this is a period also to show kindness and compassion. It is time to stay engaged, to seek solution, and to find ways forward together. The Worlddidac Future Talk is a forum for educational practitioners and the educational industry to come together to share thoughts and ideas, discuss challenges, and find solutions to those challenges. We learn from each other, and we think and explore together, and we generate new approaches together. This can help solve the problems that we're facing. The attitude and needs of education educators now seem to be changing more rapidly than ever before. Digital learning may finally be gaining wider acceptance to become a new pillar of education that has the potential to streamline and accelerate development. We need to adapt solutions and ideas to match local needs, local conditions, and local aspirations. To do this effectively takes a wide community of educational practitioners, educational developers, and educational manufacturers, advisors, as well as financial supporters, not just from one part of the world, but from the entire world. It takes an international community of concerned individuals, companies, and governmental organizations to do this. If we can harness the energy of these groups, visionaries, practitioners, and enablers, we can accelerate and find amazing solutions together. During this week's event, you'll be treated to a wonderful lineup of experts on a series of topics. We have 3 themes this year. The first is on STEM or STEAM, the second is on greening of education, and the third is on AI, or Industry 4.0 combined with digital learning. Each half-day session has a UN sponsor and also a host from Worlddidac. These themes are not only relevant to pre-COVID times, but are truly relevant during the current crisis and afterwards as well. Future Talk is part of the new vision of Worlddidac. It is where education comes together to discuss issues and challenges and to find solutions to these problems, not just to dialogue about them. Development does not happen by accident. It takes planning, collaboration, cooperation, implementation, and dedication to manage the process. During this event, you can use the WOVA app to interact and network with the key participants. We are planning to continue to hold international online education events several times during the next year, so stay tuned to the Worlddidac website for further notices. One such event that we are considering to host is a special edition on digital and online learning, which is a topic that we need to discuss more about because it is a growing area of importance to the world. Worlddidac's new vision is to connect organizations, companies, and experts to encourage dialogue, partnership, and initiatives to advance educational development and promote innovation. Our motto is Worlddidac, where education comes together. So I invite you to come and join us. Make this possible, and let's expand our global network together. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me or any of the other staff or council members on the WOVA app. That is what it is for. So I hope you enjoy the conference, that each of you finds something useful to take back with you and to stimulate your thoughts. Thank you very much, and welcome to Future Talk.
Thanks so much for the warm, welcoming words, and as Dr. McKee says, together is the most important thing. Thank you for tuning in from Indonesia, by the way. I have the great honor to hand over to our patron of Future Talk 2020, the Swiss government, represented by the State Secretary Martina Hirayama for the official opening of Future Talk 2020.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted and honored to have been asked to open Worlddidac Future Talk 2020. Federal Councillor Guy Pamela, Switzerland's Minister for Economic Affairs, Education and Research, has asked me to wish you all the very best for this event and also to urge you not to be disheartened by the difficult conditions under which large-scale events have to be held this year. As the great Swiss writer Max Frisch said, crisis is a productive state You just have to take the note of catastrophe out of it. Ladies and gentlemen, there's good reason why Federal Councillor Pamela is now the patron of your Worlddidac Future Talk. Education is a huge issue in our small country. This is evidenced by the generous investment made by the federal government and cantons in education, research and innovation. After social welfare, this is the second largest area of expenditure by the Swiss state. Switzerland is also aware of the fact that education has a huge international dimension. This begins with language skills, which we require in order to exist and thrive in the globalized world of work. Next comes the question of how best to address challenges that overwhelm even the potential of larger nations. Here I'm thinking in particular of the United Nations 17 Sustainable Development Goals. And finally, we are conscious of the growing importance of international cooperation when addressing issues related to our education system. COVID-19 has clearly shown that countries all over the world are, to a large extent, all in the same boat. In early spring this year, it was inconceivable that educational establishments at all educational levels would have to close overnight and remain closed for months in nationwide lockdowns. So no one has a tried and tested recipe to hand for ensuring that learners can get the education they need under these conditions. In Switzerland, our educational institutions have, for the large part, faced this challenge successfully, but they have done so out of pure necessity. I do not exaggerate when I say that within just a few weeks, the virus has led to a bottom-up trial and error reform of the educational system that is more radical than any achieved by years of discussion on the use of digital aids in modern teaching. The experience gained teaching and learning during lockdown now needs to be applied and developed. Switzerland believes that the future lies in blended learning, but we must ensure that all learners benefit from this approach. And I mean all in a global sense. In light of all this, we believe that the following topics need to be urgently discussed, both domestically and in an international context. First, open and secure access to digital learning and educational infrastructures and content. Second, innovative teaching ideas for blended learning. Third, systematic recognition of qualifications and learning in view of the increasingly individual nature of educational pathways. Fourth, the importance of lifelong learning to ensure people are able to adapt to the constant changes in their daily lives and in the world of work. Switzerland is willing to help in the search for solutions to these issues. At the same time, it relies on best practices from all over the world. But working together in partnership, we can all make a valuable contribution to sustainable and integrative education. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope that Worldidac's Future Talk 2020 will be a huge success. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, State Secretary. Thank you very much for your warm, welcoming words, your kind and encouraging words. We go on with our next point on the agenda. Let's go right away to the welcome address of the CEO of Worlddidac, Mr. Danny Gauch, for diving together with us into the world of STEAM education. And here he is. Danny, thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. Josef Widmer, esteemed speakers, ladies and gentlemen, educators and education enthusiasts alike. It is a great pleasure for me to welcome you to this valuable edition of Future Talk. The year 2020 has proven to be a test for all. However, I personally believe that education underwent the most drastic test. Digital transformation from practically zero to now, within a weekend in most cases. Personally, I believe that everyone has mastered this exercise quite well, and I see this as a true starting point for learning 4.0, just to quote a current industrial buzzword. When we had started planning this event, no one even dared to believe that we would be held for ransom by a global pandemic. I am of the impression, however, that the world needed this situation to come to realize that nothing is as constant as change, and that we must remain agile and informed to be able to adapt accordingly. Worlddidac is very proud to have such a variety of speakers from the Swiss government, international UN organizations, private sector, and edtech companies who are here over the next 3 days to provide you with their insights and experiences. I'm also very happy to know of the educators who are joining us online, and hopefully we will make use of this conference to interact with the speakers and other guests, so that during the 3 days, education is clearly at the center of attraction, which to me confirms that Worlddidac truly is where education comes together. I would like to now wish you all very interesting and informative days ahead. Thank you very much.
Danny Gauch, thank you very much for the welcoming words. We also look forward to great talks, panels, keynotes, and so on. I'd now like to introduce our next speaker, the Deputy Director of the State Secretariat for Education, Research and Innovation, Mr. Josef Widmer. Hello. This is your stage.
Excellencies, distinguished speakers and members of the panel, ladies and gentlemen assembled here or attending the event from anywhere else in the world. I have the great honor of presenting the first session of the Worlddidac Future Talk 2020 conference as representative of the Swiss Confederation. I wish you a warm welcome today and hope that we will all benefit from fruitful discussions and a relevant exchange of experience. The basic situation is clear to all of us. Education is one of the central prerequisites for us to continue to have sustainable livelihoods in the future. An education that is geared to issues of our time focuses on the important task of enabling individuals to develop personally in society and to integrate and remain in the labor market. Education, Mark Twain once said, is what is left over when the last dollar is gone. Let us therefore take education seriously and constantly realign education, the concept of education and education curricula with the current and future challenges faced by individuals and society. With this in mind, education today undoubtedly plays a vital role in mathematics, engineering, the natural sciences, and technology. We are living in a day and age largely characterized by technological innovations. Digitalization is transforming society and the economy on a global scale. This is why STEM is a major issue in nearly every country worldwide. We are all in the same boat, as it were. International exchange and cooperation on STEM are therefore important. We are also aware of the importance of art that turns STEM into STEAM. The internationally renowned École Cantonale d'Art de Lausanne, ECAL, is working together with the École Polytechnique Fédérale de Lausanne, EPFL, to promote innovation where technology, design, and architecture come together. ECAL and EPFL combine artistic creativity with scientific findings to find new solutions to the challenges of digital transformation. In Switzerland, we have been taking specific action for some time now to promote education in the STEM subjects. Research has shown that young people's interest in STEM subjects is determined early on, in some cases already at preschool age. That is why we pay special attention to sensitizing and motivating children and young people for these special fields. For example, we promote museums where technology can be experienced in interactive displays, develop teaching materials focused on STEM subjects, and organize information events about higher education institutions and STEM professional organizations at primary and secondary schools. And last but not least, we provide teachers with practical training to teach STEM subjects at all levels of education. We also give special consideration to increasing interest among girls and young women in STEM subjects, especially since in comparison with other countries, in Switzerland, women remain underrepresented in the STEM sector. Despite all this, it's not always easy to establish a correlation between promotion measures and their impact, since the increasingly packed curricula make longitudinal studies a demanding and complex task. We can, nonetheless, draw the following conclusions. According to the latest PISA data, 15-year-olds in Switzerland are on track in mathematics. We are in 5th place behind Singapore, South Korea, the Netherlands, and Japan. For higher education institutions, Switzerland has recently recorded remarkable growth in the number of students studying STEM subjects, resulting in an above-average increase of 25%. In comparison, the increase in non-STEM subjects is only 8%. Only time will tell to what extent this welcome trend will continue. What is clear is that interest and competence in STEM subjects will continue to require specific support in the future. Switzerland will, for example, make computer training a mandatory component in the mathematics, informatics, and natural sciences field of study from 2022. Our aim is not, of course, to end up with only programmers and software engineers. A sustainable society and economy requires a wide range of specialists, not least including those specialized in the humanities and social sciences. However, in a world in which nearly everything revolves around bits, bytes, and algorithms, having at least basic computer skills certainly can't hurt. Allow me to conclude with a little anecdote which shows that even in an increasingly digitalized world, a balanced and broad education remains necessary. In SERI, we have long been fostering a dialogue between representatives of traditional education and new technology players active in the area of education, including Google, Microsoft, etc., etc. At one event, we asked technology experts what young people should be learning these days in order to be able to cope with the future challenges of a digital world. Their response, which took us by surprise, was philosophy and ethics. In this sense, we should bear in mind that success in a digital world does not only depend on digital literacy, but also requires an education in soft skills such as creativity, curiosity, or a sense of responsibility. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Widmer, for the insights and for your support and for joining us here live in Bern. And now I say welcome to the Ambassador Embassy of Canada in Switzerland and Liechtenstein, Mrs. Kristen Ambler, which is joining us via video call. So I think we have some technical issues to fix, but our event team is doing his best to make it go in the next minutes. As you have seen, Mrs. Bincoletto was normally the one welcoming us, and we are very happy that Mrs. Kristen Ambler will talk to us. I just have a look to my colleagues over there if we can go on with the video of Mrs. Ambler or not. Maybe we switch to the first keynote. This is live, ladies and gentlemen. Yeah, thank you very much. This is live. People from all over the world joining us. There must be something tiny that something is not working out, and maybe that's the cause. At the moment, we did okay? So, thumbs up for Mrs. Ambler. Let's go. Okay, and this is live again. No, we go on to our first keynote, ladies and gentlemen. Hopefully it will work out. The connection will be better in the next minutes. We're gonna try to fix that. It's time for our first keynote then, ladies and gentlemen. Our expert is Deputy Director at the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning, who also leads the UNESCO Global Network of Learning Cities. We look forward to the keynote presentation of Raúl Valdés-Cotera. Hopefully this works. Our first keynote.
Hello everyone. Today I will explain how to adapt a lifelong learning approach to innovative education, including science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Lifelong learning is a concept that most probably sounds familiar to all of you, as it has been part of the education and employment discourse, at least in Europe, for the last 30 years, but also present in the practice of countries all over the world, making clear that we learn from the cradle to the grave. This very simple concept brings us to the idea that people of all ages can learn whatever they want in an increasing wide variety of ways. More than ever, we are aware of the importance of learning. It doesn't matter where, when, how, what, and with whom. And particularly evident that lifelong learning fosters capacity to deal with change for the future we want. This has been clearly seen in the rapid advances of technology, and more recently in COVID-19 pandemic, where we can witness how, with the interruption of schools, learning in family, digital technology, and informal learning have been the regular practices. And also realize that learning is essentially a social process. Learning as a collective endeavor is deeply rooted in all cultures and is evident in the families, communities, circle, and friends. This collective dimension puts renewed emphasis on face-to-face learning, particularly in public spaces, but at the same time it acknowledges the potential of new technologies. This learning is about becoming global citizenship who care about each other communities, and the planet. Among all learning social dimensions, cities are favorable settings for promoting lifelong learning for all because of the proximity with people. The concept of learning cities is a people-centered and learning-focused approach which provides a collaborative, action-oriented framework for working in the diverse challenges that cities are facing. On this basis, the UNESCO Global Network of Learning City was launched in 2013 with the aim of providing inspiration, know-how, and best practice on how lifelong learning can become a reality at local level. There are good examples of cities among the network that, by reinforcing the people-centered and learning-focused approach, link education with other sectors such as culture, health, work, environmental issues, and engaging a wide range of partners such as the private sector, civil society, organizations, academia, etc. In the last months, the Learning City members had worked hand in hand to share their solutions, not only providing learning during the pandemic, but also overcoming the crisis itself, More than 25 webinars have been organized with cities together with experts to exchange ideas on contingency plans and measures taken. When addressing the topic of STEAM, some important lessons came up that I would like to share with you today. We need to make a change to the cultural and institutional environment that promotes stereotypes about what we should participate and who can excel in STEAM fields, that inclusive learning environments can welcome intellectual diversity of knowledge and thought. With the limit of time for today's presentation, I would like to suggest 4 key aspects which are interconnected for developing and cultivating such a learning social environment. Number 1, it's very important to organize virtual learning communities that involve all stakeholders to demonstrate the relevance and value of STEAM in everyday life. Develop virtual learning communities that involve schools, parents, community organizations, non-formal learning institutions, including museums and libraries, to provide consistent exposure of STEAM. Teachers, educators, and parents can take the role of mentors to encourage learners to learn about the world around them. These formal and informal educators harness perhaps one of the greatest assets in transforming STEAM education, children's curiosity. And it's with all aspects of education, the entire community plays a critical role in demonstrating the relevance, promoting exposure, and equitable access to high-quality STEAM learning experiences. The engagement of the full range of stakeholders and community members in improving STEAM education in particular contexts can help mitigate the behavioral structure and organizational factors that affect STEAM teaching and learning, practices that play a role in engaging or turning certain groups of learners away from STEAM pathways. Number 2, to make a good use of informal and non-formal learning settings to enable hands-on investigation and experience of failure. STEAM education in formal schooling settings does not consistently promote some of the core values and practices of science and engineering in practice, namely searching for uncertainty, recognizing ambiguity, and learning from failure. In reflecting on what STEAM education should encourage, renowned researchers in this field describe a process of wonder and discovery, playful hands-on investigation, learning from failure, and an enterprise that allows youth to marry their convictions and enthusiasm with opportunities to grow. In that sense, integrating STEAM content into experiences that invite play, thinking, discovery, and risk. Number 3, providing learning opportunities to solve real problems and promoting an interdisciplinary approach. The complex and interlinked challenges humanity is facing today cannot be solved by single disciplines or within particular sectors. They require the bringing together of collective intelligence from different fields and stakeholders, including researchers, policymakers, entrepreneurs, educators, and learners. Learning processes must go beyond disciplinary and sectorial boundaries. Transdisciplinary or interdisciplinary and intersectorial collaboration should include joint research as well as a practical implementation of innovative learning. Interdisciplinary approaches to teaching and learning that appropriately and effectively integrate and show connections among key concepts and ideas between different disciplines, helping students establishing a systemic way of learning and thinking. And the last one, number 4, utilizing the power of technologies and make STEAM education flexible and inclusive. Technology-enabled tools can support students gain content and technical knowledge through online videos outside the school day to prepare them for more active, applied learning of the content and expand their access to authentic and interdisciplinary STEAM learning experiences. This can facilitate student-centered instruction and support students' retention of information, engagement skills, and learning outcomes. These tools can facilitate a learning ecosystem that enables deeper learning in STEAM. They can bring the world into the classroom and the classroom to the outside world, contributing to create inclusive, flexible, and high-quality STEAM learning experiences. As a conclusion, I will say that all members of the community feel involved and should feel involved and empowered to participate in STEAM teaching and learning. That STEAM is not perceived as something that is imposed or is outside the scope of people, but is culturally appealing and relevant. That the components of the vision and the propagation of innovation practices effectively connect STEAM with the broader agendas of people's interest and their everyday life. The joy of making STEAM an experience of a lifetime would undoubtedly help us make the planet a better place to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Valdés-Cotera. So one more try. We tried to fix the connection with Mrs. Ambler, and our best technical team does its best to make it work. So I have a look if I get a thumbs up, and there she is. We don't hear anything, but maybe
head of political
now.
and cultural affairs at the Embassy of Canada to Switzerland. On behalf of the Ambassador of Canada, Her Excellency Susan Bincoletto, and Worlddidac, it is an honor to welcome you to the Future Talk Conference. We are so pleased that Canada was chosen to host this event, and we would like to thank Danny Gauch, Worlddidac's Director General, for nominating us for this honor. I'd also like to recognize all of you, the participants in today's events, who are engaged in the important work of improving international education. More than ever, in these challenging and quickly evolving times, your work is vital. Canada is today's host because we are recognized worldwide for our outstanding quality of education, from elementary to post-secondary studies in both private and public settings. Education is highly valued in Canada, and our government recognizes that high-quality, inclusive education is an essential element for Canada's long-term success. In fact, at 6% of our GDP, Canada spends more on education than the OECD average. Canada's public education system is not only well-funded, but of very high caliber. The federal government ensures that education, which is managed provincially, adheres to a national standard that is consistently high across the country. We are very proud that 10% of Canadian universities rank among the global top 200, and 5 Canadian MBA schools are in the top 100. International students from around the world are paying attention and are choosing Canada in unprecedented numbers. Canada's international student population has in fact tripled over the past decade. Last year alone, we welcomed over 640,000 international students. This growth has moved Canada into 3rd place globally, behind the US and Australia in terms of international student population. For Swiss students studying abroad, Canada ranks 4th in their choice of destinations. And of course, we are working hard to move up in this ranking as well. Virtual education at Canadian institutions is also growing in popularity and opening up new possibilities for an international education in a world constrained by the COVID-19 pandemic. International students bring valuable skills and new ideas that contribute toward our excellence and ability to innovate. And Canada's ability to welcome these students has contributed to our reputation for leading-edge research and innovation at Canada's institutions of higher learning. Today, we are so pleased to welcome Canadian speaker Denise Samuel, President and CEO of Colleges and Institutes Canada, who will share with us her expertise and knowledge on these topics and more at the Future Talk Conference panel discussion at 2:15. Denise is eager to engage with you, to answer questions, and discuss how we can adapt international education and skills development to meet our society's future complex needs. I hope that you will take full advantage of this opportunity to meet with Denise during this conference. Thank you for being here, and I wish you an inspiring and impactful Future Talk Conference today. Thank you.
Mrs. Kristen Ambler, Ambassador, Embassy of Canada in Switzerland and Liechtenstein. Yeah, the gentleman we will now hear about is, let's say, a professional all-rounder. He is a futurist, a humanist, a philosopher, a musician, and an early internet entrepreneur. I'm looking forward to his speech, to his keynote. Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Mr. Gerd Leonhard.
Hi, this is Gerd Leonhard, futurist and humanist in Zurich. Really great pleasure to be with you today for all 3 days of the Future Talk Forum in Bern in Switzerland, albeit of course I'll be there remotely with you. But I'll kick this off with the first session that's going to be about education and future foresights on what's called STEAM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. And I will have 2 other juicy topics for you tomorrow. Let's start right here, and by analyzing what's happening right now, it's really quite clear we're in a period of great transformation and disruption, and also of hardship, I think, with the COVID crisis, economic, personal, social hardship. But we're now transitioning into a new world where things that used to be on top have landed at the bottom, like flying, like cruise ships, oil and gas, and Bitcoin, and all the practical things of a developed industrial society. Now we have new things on the top: technology, healthcare, working from home, the whole discussion about how we're going to live in a sustainable world, and who does what, and globalization and government. It's all new topics. There's a new narrative forming, and I call this a great transformation, which is a huge chance for us to reset. Some people talk about the Great Reset, the World Economic Forum does, and many other people have other terms for it. But here's an interesting cover design from Time magazine, also talking about the Great Reset. That is the time that's happening right now. And so next year should be really quite exciting, if, of course, still very difficult. We're not going to head out of the corona crisis anytime soon next year, maybe at the end of next year if we're lucky. We're living in a world that is not returning to normal. Whatever you thought about normal, I thought normal wasn't good enough, but we're not going back there. We're not going back to a place where we travel as usual, we burn fossil fuel as usual, we have the same jobs, we work from the office. That is being rethought in every country around the world. Here in Switzerland, things are a little bit different, and we are often slower in responding to this, but yeah. We're not going back to normal. We're going to a set of new normals. We're going into a world that is essentially warp drive into the future. And when you think about education and vocational training and what we have to learn in this world, basically the next 10 years will bring more change than the previous 100 years. And this is not an overstatement. And we're essentially going into that future gradually, then suddenly, everything's kind of going slowly, like cloud computing or quantum computing or the Internet of Things or technology, and boom, it's there. All of a sudden, we have a legal music service, several of them, and music is in the cloud. That took 10 years. So gradually, then suddenly is borrowed from a Hemingway novel, of course. But basically what we see here is the pandemic is a great accelerator of the things that were already there before. If there was inequality, we have more of it now. If there was political distrust, we have more of it now. If there's good things like working from home, doing remote teaching, remote learning, learning in the cloud, that is exploding. So I'm going to show you a couple of those key trends, very important, I think, when we talk about education and the future to look at this. Online learning and training is exploding, and that's going to take a huge boost from virtual reality, from augmented reality, holograms. But having said that, of course, everybody knows that online learning is not the same than person-to-person meet space, real-life learning. It's great, but it's different, and I'll talk about that later, why that is. A virtual video conference, as we do now, that is set to explode. Telemedicine, telehealth. Yeah, people are now saying, well, maybe I don't have to go to the doctor. It may be risky, so I'm going to do a remote consultation. The doctor on demand here on your Apple Watch, right? E-commerce, online media is exploding. We're moving into a world where everything is all of a sudden, it seems like it was gradual, and now boom is here, working from home, right? In Switzerland, we have always worked from home quite a bit, and we have good resources, networks, mobile networks, wireless networks, and so on for all of that, but this is definitely also a huge challenge in our mindset. And what do we need to know to work from home? And the skills we need in the office are really quite different than the ones we need from home. I think we're in a time of great transformation, a time of great reset, where we essentially are, as Buckminster Fuller liked to say, the great futurist, at a fork in the road. Right? It is a place where we have to make sure that we take the right turn towards the sunny part of that road, not the dark part. And what would education for a new world look like? And how do we train our skills for that new world? The next 10 years, more changes than the previous 100 years? Well, what do we need to know? What kind of skills do we need? Probably not at all the same than 10 years ago. We're living in a world that is exponentially fast and also exponentially challenging. Right? It's not actually 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 anymore. It's exploding. It's doubling. An exponential curve, Moore's law, Metcalfe's law, 4, 8, 16, 32. Go up the scale a few times, you're at 1 billion. So our kids are going to see a world that's exponentially different. And that change will be absolutely mind-boggling in terms of what is becoming possible, what we have to know. But it could also be very rewarding because we can solve global problems this way that have been there for quite some time. I often use this image of the mega shifts and the game changes. And here are the 10 game changes that we're currently seeing around us, technological game changes. And I think we've seen those for a while, like 3D printing or intelligent machines or blockchain. But they're finally all coming together and creating new possibilities. I mean, if it wasn't for all this technology, the cloud, the mobile, the analytics, we probably have a lot more people in the hospital and even dying than we have now. I mean, this is a bad enough number, but think about what happened in World War I, the swine flu, 60 million people. And now we have the tech to coordinate and to make this easier. So basically what's happening all around us, this is what we have to know. What's happening with virtuality and quantum computing? And you can read more about that if you just go to Game Changes on Google and put in my name. You'll see. But basically what's happening here is really quite simple, is that technology is no longer just exponential. It's also converging the industries, right? And creating combinatorial results. So, for example, many companies are now experiencing that they are becoming tech companies, right? The biotechnology companies, for example, genetic engineering, and e-commerce. Everything is around technology now. And education is going the same path. There's going to be a huge amount of investment in technology, huge possibilities of new sources. But it comes down still to one thing, humans learn best with and other humans. Through engagement and experiences. And that's going to remain, I think, the cornerstone of education and training in the future. Apart from those three things that we see all around us, everything is in the cloud, our movies, our books, everything else. Everything is becoming intelligent, so-called, but I think that word is actually quite bad. It's more like, becoming smart rather than intelligent. But if we set this aside for a minute, what is happening on top of this is this kind of convergence of humans and machines. As we look around us, it's quite clear that, every day there's more technology to support us and to help us, and sometimes also to affect us and to infect us, so to speak, like social networks or gaming or virtuality. Now we have to ask a question, what does it mean all for education? And what does it mean for what we have to learn, what skills we have? It's quite clear that computers are getting quite skillful, not in any human sense, but the routine is probably going to be done by machines. Any routine, really, as long as it's understandable by machines, for example, a call center, or researching, or filing, connecting. We're already using lots and lots of tools that are kind of intelligent, for the most part. So I think it's safe to say my favorite movie, Blade Runner, has set forth, 30 years ago, well, the first one, right? Science fiction is becoming science fact. And I think I have observed that all around me, wherever you look, science fiction that used to be, kind of theoretically possible but not happening, is all around us. For example, now we are speaking to computers and they understand us. Not very well yet, but you can see where this is going. In 5 years, you can speak to your machine and ask any question and it won't even be a machine. It could just be your wristwatch or the wall. And you can get pretty smart answers. You can probably sit at home and enjoy the internet delivering everything to you. I call this a sofalarity, kind of like the singularity. You can do 3D printing of many, many objects, including shoes and electric devices, electronic devices, and of course body parts like kneecaps and earlobes. And that's already here, but just give it 10 years and we'll see what that future will bring. And of course, machines are now becoming intelligent, and they're becoming also assistant to us. So telemedicine, being able to have remote diagnostics, could reduce hospital visits by 80% if used correctly. And this is clearly the way that Apple is going and others. And last but not least, machines are learning. Are they learning like us? No. But they can certainly look at a lot of patterns. IBM Watson's AI can read basically, I think, 1 million books in 2 minutes, and it can store all this information that humans can't. Machine learning, deep learning, and language understanding. I mean, imagine what that means when the computer can speak to you and actually understand when you speak, like with a person, which is not quite there, but soon will be. We're going to see stuff like this as a great project by Waverly Labs. It's a translation device.
How did last night's assignment go?
كيف ذهبت مهمة الليالي الماضية؟
كان جيدا. كان هناك مشكلة واحد لا نستطيع الحصول عليه.
It was all right, but there was one problem I didn't get.
I think this device is still in demo stages, but clearly you could see that, yeah, once we have that, think about education. I mean, you can speak in 30 languages or receive information in 30 languages and send WhatsApps in 50 languages in real time. Or you can use Facebook's so-called Infinite Office, which allows you to dive into the virtual world and understand what's happening there, like Tom Cruise in Minority Report. Imagine if we had that now. Yeah, it could be heaven, it could be hell, but think about the impact on education and learning and development of this. It could be too good to be true in many ways. So we're heading into the future where what I call the mega shifts in my first book, in my recent book, is becoming even more important. And these are not just technology, they're also social shifts, and they're like a matrix of things that are interacting all the time. And if we look at those, you can have a look at the website, megashifts.digital, where you can download the whole chapter, all in like 12 languages. But it's interactively impacting each other. So we have augmentation, we have robotization, we have cognification, systems becoming smart. We have machines that understand other machines and can find patterns and do things that used to be humans doing this kind of work, which is probably still on the lower level of cognitive work. But of course, automation will be a much bigger change than globalization has ever been. And this map of changes, virtualization, what technology does, is going to be mind-boggling in terms of what it can do for us and which way we can go. So I think the mega shifts are going to impact all of the sciences and engineering and math, but they will also push us towards a world that's about HECI, right? Humanity, ethics, creativity, and imagination, because machines will be able to do so much more logical work. And we're going to be in an entirely different world that's kind of not, to get too traditional here with the brain halves, but it's not going to be just about IQ and smartness. It's going to be about EQ, right? The human factor, the emotional quotient, emotional intelligence. And that just means basically being human and having compassion. And how do you develop that? Can you go to school for this? Can you get an MBA in emotions? And so I think our future holds that STEM will still be very important. It's all about technology. But on the other hand, the humanities are coming back. Huh? Humanity, ethics, creativity, imagination. I call that HECI as an abbreviation as opposed to STEM. So those two things will be balanced very much in our future. And we're going to see a huge momentum on the curriculum in schools, to go back to this, but also in companies, to have training for curiosity, and training for imagination, training for intuition. And you can see in this amazing chart here from the World Economic Forum, the future of jobs, what we see here is that companies are looking to accelerate digitization and remote work opportunities and automation. Clearly, it's all about tech. And amazingly, we see quite a few people who want to reassign workers, but not too many that want to basically completely decrease the workforce, if you're being honest. But businesses have to adopt, and this is where we're going, and that's going to force us to be better humans and have better skills in the future. That's clearly going to be a very, very big change. I always say that the future is not an extension of the present or the past. The future is new. Right? And whatever has worked until now, great. Will that work in the future? Unlikely. The music business does not sell CDs anymore, even though they still do, right? But you may have still bought one. But it's in the cloud, it's different. The future is not the same than the past. It's an extension of the future coming backwards. So very important for us to realize in our training and our future skills, what we teach our kids or our employees. We have to teach them the future. We have to teach them what they may need tomorrow. Right? In this sort of upside down world that we're clearly seeing here, these waves are all over us, right? First the COVID wave, challenging us, challenging our existence, our survival, then climate change, which is the next thing, and of course after that a new economic logic. How would you understand this? Well, you have to have what I call a future mindset, right? And get ready to educate yourself on the future. So this wraps up my first session, and tomorrow I'll be back and I'll talk about green futures and what that means for education, and of course the next day with yet another one. Thanks very much for tuning in, and I'll see you tomorrow.
Wow. Mr. Leonhard, thank you for the food for thoughts. This was an impressive presentation, and what a great presentation in the back. I'm thrilled. I love that. So, ladies and gentlemen, we will have a short break, only some minutes, for changing the setting here. And in the meantime, you can check our website, futuretalk.org, for getting all the information about our speakers, insights, and many more. You can also find the agenda, and maybe you want to have a look what happens tomorrow or this afternoon. We will be back in some seconds, and if you want to share your thoughts, please use the hashtag FutureTalk2020. See you in some minutes. Stay tuned and don't go anywhere. wir sind schon drauf. We're there already. I didn't see the sign. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, after a short break to Future Talk 2020. Some of our guests got a coffee or a new drink, and hopefully you too, at home or at the home office. As you see, I have a guest here, and I'm looking forward to a talk with Peter Ziswiler, Head Corporate HR at Georg Fischer AG. Hello,
Hi,
Mr. Ziswiler. Good to have you here.
Thank you.
So, Georg Fischer AG, why is learning such a focus in this company, in your company?
We are a Swiss industrial organization acting on a global level, and having about 30 to 40% of our value adding in Switzerland and only about 4% of the turnover in Switzerland, and being confronted with the fact that we have a constant appreciation of the Swiss franc. So basically our products become more and more expensive. Even if we digitalize, if we automate, if we improve our processes, etc. So what we can what makes us distinctively different and where we can achieve a competitive advantage, particularly against our competitors coming from Asia, for instance, is by evolving into a specific culture, meaning as well a learning culture. If our people collaborate, if our people know what they can do best for the organization, if they are on top of issues, if they are aware about the modern technology and forms on working together, I think we can have and establish a competitive advantage that is not easy to copy.
You mentioned this learning culture. How does this learning culture really look like at Georg Fischer AG?
I think, first of all, it is important that we do not train and educate only a specific group. So we do not limit that to age or particularly, and certainly not to any gender or anything. So everybody is invited to join in any kinds of trainings. So there is some basic trainings about the organization that you need to know. But then we come easily into culture elements like, for instance, we train on the 7 habits and how we collaborate. But the learning culture as such is established as well, accepting that something at times does not go well. So a learning culture is one of the core elements for us, particularly being in an environment of industry and engineers, the acceptance of something not going the way it should have gone or it would have been expected. So if people can openly address and openly admit that something didn't go well, that obviously intelligent failures, hopefully, that opens as well the aspiration of trying different and new things, as well as learning with different methods or approaching an issue on a different and new path rather than maybe on a traditional one, maybe achieving in this way a result much faster. But as well, this is a high risk, and then it is important that if people fail, that they accept that failure easily and quickly. So we have the saying within the organization coming from the design thinking, fail fast to succeed early.
That's a very human way of thinking because making mistakes is human, it's normal, and we have to cope with this. Practical experience is very important for young people to get into the flow, to get into what's happening in the future. Why is apprenticeship so important for you and your company?
Apprenticeship is important in 2 ways. One way is certainly we have a larger group of people which are simply maybe not tuned to go for a demanding university curriculum, which have maybe more interest in practical work and maybe not that much in theory. Many of these young people going into apprenticeship over time then aspire to go deeper into the issues and maybe attend an university of applied science in a continuous path. But the apprenticeship, I believe, is so successful because people are working on practical elements. I mean, when we talk STEM or STEAM, that is in a shop that people can really actively do and try new things, or they are doing practical pieces or they are part of a process, and they are working together with more experienced people, so they learn a lot while doing. And then that is in Switzerland combined as well with schooling. By the way, it's as well in Germany and Austria where we have a similar concept. And it's interesting if you observe on a global level that Switzerland, Germany, and Austria as well, compared to many other countries, have a relatively low unemployment rate among young people. And I strongly believe that this is in the sense of the apprenticeship, because apprentices can be involved immediately into active and practical work in the organization.
As we talk about Georg Fischer AG, people say your company has a very people-oriented culture. Isn't this in conflict with the demands of business or the professional performance?
I don't think so, no.
Good.
I think they are adjacent. I think one cannot be excluded with the other. If you want people to feel safe, we talk, for instance, in the organization of the so-called psychological safety. If you want them to perform, as I mentioned before, if you talk about a failure culture as well, the acceptance of failure, if we allow people to speak up, they need to feel safe to do so. And I think that we can achieve results and as well developments quicker if we have such an open and transparent culture where people feel safe. They feel safe to speak up, to as well defend another opinion, and are tuned to try new things in different ways.
Georg Fischer AG is a very traditional organization, established in 1802 already. So how can you ensure to stay abreast of the contemporary technical culture and learning attitudes and developments?
Well, we are around since more than 200 years, and I think that says as well a lot that it's not about only the history. I think the company has to invent itself on a permanent way, meaning you have to accept sometimes that things or businesses are maybe not the same as they were in the past, and you need them to evolve into new environments. And I think that's exactly what we're doing. We are looking where are fields of the future. Where can we, with our knowledge, technologies, bring value to society and to the people on this planet? So this is a constant tuning, and that again requires the openness of the organization to learn. Absolutely, yeah.
Mr. Ziswiler, thank you very much for the insights, for letting us into the world of Georg Fischer. All the best to you, and thank you very much for being here in Bern with us.
Thank you, appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we have a quick applause, thanks. We continue with our first panel for today. I'm looking forward to meet the participants. Let's talk about, in the age of 4.0, how do children get exposed to STEAM education at an early age to help push national economic and social growth? This is the topic we will talk about in the next 50 minutes, and I'm very happy to welcome 4 specialists in this field, 2 here live in Bern and 2 via video call. I say welcome to Hans Hess, the president of Swissmem. Where is there? Over there. Hello, Mr. Hess. Good to have you here.
Thank
Hello.
you.
Take a seat, please.
Thank you.
And Alexis Georgacopoulos, the director, University of Art and Design, Lausanne. Hello.
Hello.
Welcome.
Hello.
And we are very happy to welcome also Denise Amyot, President and CEO of Colleges and Institutes in Canada, who is joining us live via Zoom. And there she is, hello, and also Mr. Taha, Bawa, co-founder and CEO of Goodwall. Welcome and thank you for joining us. Can we hear you? Also, Denise Amyot, President and CEO of Colleges and Institutes in Canada.
I can hear you. It seems like there might be a little lag, but I can hear you.
A bit of delay, I just heard that. Okay, but we can hear you, we can see you, that's perfect. So I think we just start with the first question that I'd like to hand over to Mr. Hess. Mr. Hess, let's open the day with the first question. Why is STEM education so important, especially for the industry sector?
I would say that most of the big challenges for society these days, things like climate change, energy saving, mobility, safe food, water, all these type of things actually will require new and innovative, and I believe mostly technical solutions. So if that's true, then the industry who will provide the technical solutions to these applications or to these challenges will actually need a workforce that is able to use these modern technologies in order to bring the world forward. And if that's true, then I think the Swiss industry will need to make sure that, as has been mentioned before, we are one of the most expensive places in the world. If we want to be competitive, we need to do something different. And I believe, in addition to education, which has been mentioned before, and this lifelong learning and a learning organization, I believe the capability to be innovative, to have innovative new ideas to be applied to make these problems resolved or at least improved, I think this requires an enormous amount of talent and an enormous amount of knowledge in this STEM or STEAM capacity. And I would even take this one level up and say it's not only about science and technology and engineering and these type of things. It also is important that we train people to be more curious, train people to be able to do critical thinking, to resolve complex issues, team cooperation and collaboration. So I think if we group all these things together, there is this term of 21st century skills, and I think at the end of the day, we will need to be able to train our youth on these 21st century skills, but it's not going to be enough. We will also have to train the current workforce, and even people like myself, to actually be skillful in these 21st centuries. So that's why I believe this is very important, and once we have learned all these skills, we will need to be able to apply this. You know, all the knowledge, all the science, everything is useless, in a sense, if it's not applied to solve people's problems. And I think this is another strength that Switzerland has. We have a lot of training and institutions that actually focus on application, focus on resolving problems. And I think if we can, let's say, take this STEM education, expand it to STEAM and to the 21st century skills, and apply these quickly to solve the world's problem, then I think the Swiss industry and the global industry can make a huge contribution to these challenges.
You're right. Mr. Georgacopoulos, art is in your veins, we can say that. You're the Director, University of Art and Design in Lausanne. Let's talk about the A in STEAM. Why are arts the key component in STEAM, and why is this so important for education in your perspective?
Okay, my answer will be, of course, very biased, as you just said, but I think I'm here to represent the A as much as I can.
Yes, please.
In a way, I think it's something extremely important, because if we look at STEM, of course, it's something which has been going on for years, let's say, or a very long time, and there's a lot of connection between all these. And I think that the art section, which is not, of course, just arts in the very basic sense of the word, but it includes everything which has to do with creativity, again, in a very broad sense. I think it's what today can make a difference, and what can connect also all the other disciplines together. And I think that in today's world, as it was just said, it's what is going to make not just a difference, but make also give a direction in all that which is happening right now, in terms of giving some, let's say, purpose on all that, and also be, if you look at what the younger generation also aspires to, give also some more meaning to all that, bringing more humanity, bringing more inclusiveness, which is, of course, maybe it's not something that you would find directly in, engineering or mathematics, as, maybe an older generation would think.
So creativity is very important now at the moment. Maybe some people would say, okay, art is not the best thing to do now. Maybe do something like technology or something like this. How would you support young people that say, oh, art is in my blood too?
No, I think that it's because of art that we can, of course, remain hopeful, that we can look into, something more looking into the future, and which I think also makes us, I hope, look at the brighter things in life, or at least what remains.
You're right.
And in any way, I think that it's what actually gives maybe some more contemporary output or outlook in things like technology or sciences, which maybe keeps them and makes them even more relevant than they are already. I mean, we can see very easily in projects which come out from ECAL, for example, or from any other design school today, that it's not just the arts for the sake of arts. I think it's arts which embrace all the other disciplines, which bring them together, which create or give solutions to problems, society problems, human problems, ecological problems, and it's this maybe this je ne sais quoi, if you want, of the artists, which actually creates something which is not easy to define by pure or very, very mathematical or in square calculations or diagrams. And this difference, I think, is something which every country, I would say, should work on and foster in order to really make it something like an additional strength of their identity, and also even if we speak about identity of the industry, but identity of the education, which I think education also has become something which many countries put upfront as an export also today, and I think that Switzerland has a big role to play in that today again.
Thank you for these insights. Mr. Bawa, one question, and we have a delay. Hopefully, this will work out.
I can hear you. I think it's...
You can hear me, that's good. How does your business leverage technology to impact society in a positive way? And how does this help young people to overcome the so-called gender gap? Right. Mr. Bawa.
Yeah, thank you so much. So our mission at the end of the day is to level the playing field for youth around the world, help them maximize their potential and impact society positively. We do that leveraging a mobile-first technology that is accessible to everyone, and that really gives them the right experiences as well as the right opportunities at the right time. The way we looked at this, and the reason why we got into this business, or this social enterprise rather, was because we believed the reason I'm here in front of you today is, or virtually, is not because I'm necessarily smarter or harder working than most people, but rather because I was lucky to have the experiences and the education, specifically education that happens outside of what we define as formal education. So really those experiences of being able to develop that confidence, of being able to develop resilience, of being able to develop certain experiences or broadness of mind that allows me to be where I am. And we said, if we could give those opportunities to millions of other people, well, then we're likely to not only help them maximize their potential, find the right path for them, build up their confidence, give them the right skills, but also impact society positively. Because a key part of what we're doing is not just about maximizing the potential of an individual. I think now more than ever, how can that individual contribute towards society when they're within the workforce, with their decisions, how they go about supply, I mean, anything from, and this is across industry, you don't have to work for a non-for-profit to move society forward. And when we talk about the gender gap, it's the same for all youth, but it's exasperated within the context of gender. We look at it as a funnel when we talk about experiences. Your first experiences start, with where you're born. And then when we talk about the gender gap, the first cultural influences seem to come on like a day after you're born. And then it just continues. And there's a funnel of dropouts towards when we talk about gender and STEM, for example, that, at least from our understanding, that happens from that day. And then, there are other inflection points at the age of 16, at the age of 18, and going forward. Part of that is linked to confidence. Part of that is linked to role modeling. Part of that is linked to exposure. And we emphasize that through our platform. So it's a community where you can, I give you a concrete example, a little bit anecdotal. We had a Jordanian girl who was really into robotics. Nobody around her was really into robotics. She was able to connect to students in the US. She then did an internship at NASA and is continuing her journey, right? So this is what's happening really outside of the classroom, but we gave her that opportunity to understand what is possible. And then, of course, we connected her to that scholarship and that opportunity down the line. And so that's really kind of how we do it. So it's giving them the opportunities at a young age, as early as possible on a global level. And our approach is really, we serve millions of youth around the world, and we're trying our best to make sure that it's not just serving high achievers looking to go to Ivy League schools, but really everyone as much as possible. And that's why technology is important, because we just wouldn't be able to afford it otherwise. Giving them
what a great example. That's the way it should be. Mrs. Amyot, you just nodded, and I think you agree on what Mr. Bawa said in the last minutes. I can see it in your face. And thank you for joining us too, Mrs. Amyot. One question I'd like to hand over to you is, how encourages the Canadian Future of Skills Council the creation of green jobs for the future generations? Do you have an example for us too?
First, I want to say how I agreed with what Taha was saying, and now I would like to have a side conversations with him later. So your question is about green skills?
Yes, green education, green jobs for future generations.
Okay, so for us, when we talked about green education, we talk about the way you live, the way you study, the way you work, and the way you play. And what we try to do is to integrate, in fact, green spirit, green skills in every single curriculum. We do it also with the facilities that we have to ensure that they are green. We ensure also that we work with communities to ensure that communities, in fact, are educated with respect to green skills. It could be to have a community garden on the campus, in fact. It could be to have a garden with indigenous plants so that people see that you can have different types of green, if you want. And we also make sure that, of course, we do those recycle, reuse, and all that. But what we found is that if you involve students, they are all about greening. It is the best way to engage them. And whenever there are groups within the institutions that were looking at the greening, what is happening is that we have noticed better retention of students because they feel engaged in a good cause. So there are many reasons to look at green skills. It's not only from an environmental point of view, but it's also from a social point of view and a cultural point of view. Because one of the things, for example, that we try to do is to ensure that even if you teach culinary arts, you think about green, you think about ensuring you use all the products. If you teach constructions, we ensure that we talked about using products that are good for the environment. In the labs, we ensure also that students that will become lab technicians will know about this.
Thank you, Mrs. Amyot, for sharing your thoughts with us. Mr. Hess, another question. When and where should STEAM education take place?
I would say as early as possible and everywhere.
And everywhere.
I would say as early as possible. and that can even start, you know, I have seen my own children grow. I see now my grandchildren grow. And I can see how curious they are, how creative they are. And you can help them to explore the world and science and technology and engineering and arts and all these things which we are talking about very early on, as soon as you can start to communicate with them. But I think from an empirical studies point of view, we have learned that if we do not expose, if we do not have given children, let's say, an initial formal exposure until the age of 6 years to some of these STEM-related matters, not in a scientific way, in a very practical, in a very day-to-day applied way, I think it will be difficult to bring them to a next level. And if they do not have a consolidated basic understanding about STEM matters at the age of 12, which is the finish of the middle school in Switzerland, then, so this is the 6th year of education. If they don't have a consolidated view of these matters, it will be very difficult to motivate them to go into STEM-related studies and to motivate them to go into STEM-related jobs at the later stage. So, and this is particularly challenging for girls. And I think, you know, in our industry, I have to shame on us, but we are a man's world, and we cannot afford to be a man's world anymore. We need young ladies, young children to come up and be interested in these STEM matters and overcome some of these prejudices. And we will need to facilitate and coach them and help them in order to get there. But I would say primary school is certainly already an important time when you need to expose children to STEM, and certainly later on as well. So I'd say we think it's not, and we should not only limit this to school. You know, you can obviously formal teaching is one thing, but we need to again allow these children to apply their knowledge in the real world and resolve tasks together with other kids, you know, and apply this learning, which then, you know, I've learned in my own early teaching expertise that you need to learn by thinking, but then you need to repeat it, and then you need to apply it, and then you kind of find a way to consolidate your knowledge. And I think the same is true for STEM education. So as early on and as broadly as possible, certainly in primary school.
But then maybe also the social life plays a very important role. It means parents, grandparents, when you say it should start before the age of 6, then they're at the kindergarten, they are at home, they play with other children. How can we support that?
Yes, I think you make a very good point. I think we should not push all the responsibility to the teachers in primary school or secondary school or universities. I think this is also a social engagement. And I enjoy enormously at this point in time to play with my grandchildren and open their eyes. And you can start with engineering with Lego, you know, and do other things. And they're so creative. And they're so creative and they're so curious, you know, and they enjoy so enormously. And they play together, and it's fantastic. So I think we maybe should also overcome this notion that teaching is only a school matter. Teaching is a daily matter, and as has been mentioned by the gentleman from Georg Fischer, you know, we need to continue to teach. This is a lifelong learning experience, and things change so rapidly. We will learn different jobs. We will learn several jobs during our lives, and we need to relearn and learn new things and maybe unlearn all things. So I think this is a constant learning experience which should not be limited to formal school teaching. I think that's my point.
Thank you, thank you. Mr. Georgacopoulos, what are the possible positive impacts of STEAM for societies and future generations, in your opinion?
I think it's, again, as it was previously said, I think it's an impact on society which can only go in a good way. I think to broaden up each one's horizons is extremely important, and to also, as Mr. Hess was saying, I think to create more curiosity from a very early stage, and to really, I would say, train people to be even more curious. I think it's something which needs to be trained. Curiosity is not something that you have it, of course, but then you can always raise it to a higher level.
What do you think? What happens that it's not raising? What does it stop?
No. Sorry, I didn't understand.
What stops the curiosity of growing?
I think,
is it time? Is it the focus on the wrong things?
It's maybe, getting used to things as they always were, and not, like being in a routine, for example, and not questioning what are you doing in your life, why you do it, why does somebody else do that the way they do it.
Yeah.
I think it's something which is an ever, going thing, and I think it also has a lot to do with this continuous learning, especially in the arts and design fields. You're never an expert of anything. You always become better, you always learn new things, and you always, let's say, strive to learn new things and to make yourself more knowledgeable than you were maybe a day earlier or a month or a year. And I think that also goes together with the transdisciplinarity, because I think it's something which also STEAM encourages. It's not vertical silos. Each, of course, should be starting from somewhere as a basic knowledge, but then can, go like a zigzag through all of them or most of them by taking the parts which are needed. And especially, for example, in arts and design again, today these fields have become in a way that you cannot remain in a closed field. You have to go out and search for things, and I think knowledge is around us everywhere, and I think it would be a crime to say that, okay, now I reached a point where I don't want to know any more of any other things. I think it's very important that the schools, of course, first of all, and families, of course, but basically schools learn, teach people and young people to really go out and look for information, and I think it's something which society needs today more than ever, to be knowledgeable of not just one thing, but of many things constantly.
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions you'd like to pose to our panelists, to our speakers, please use the comment function on YouTube or in our event app, and I will hand the most of them over to our panelists at the end of our panel talk. So it's also interactive. Please use the comment function. Mr. Bawa, another question to you. You have an educational background in international economics. How did this influence your first business, and how could your advice look like in light of this for the global community?
Yeah, thanks. So I started my first business actually before getting my university degree. So I wasn't qualified in any ways in terms of economics. I didn't know much about economics when I started my first company. I think economics is a good base, and I'm lucky to have studied it. But I've changed kind of my view on the importance of what you study. I used to think that it was super important to pick a certain field. I think given the current situation of the world, which is just accelerating in this direction, one of the few things, if I can humbly say, that we do know about the future is that it is constantly changing. We live in a world where industries are being created and destroyed over the span of years, where skills, hard skills, are being rendered obsolete over the span of years. So I think rather than saying a particular subject or university or other is important, I'd say what I learned most of what I know through doing, and I've gone through continuous education. I'm super drinking the Kool-Aid of that lifelong learning journey. But I think what's really important for the next generation is not necessarily a hard skill, but rather the soft skill of being able to be resilient and being able to be adaptable. Probably the best advice I received when I was making my first pitches from an investor was, a very successful investor was, he said, I don't normally get it right the first time, but I tend to be very quick in getting it right, in fixing it when I get it wrong. I think that's kind of interesting and it applies very well to the world of work, because you might work somewhere and then all of a sudden that company has disappeared or that entire department has disappeared. And if you don't have that resilience to deal with it, and I think this next generation has just had a crash course in resilience because of the COVID crisis in a way that few have maybe experienced in the Western world over the past 50, 60 years, that is so useful for the future and so useful for the future of work. So I think that's probably my advice, I don't know if it answers your question exactly. I'm not to undermine economists, but,
No?
but yeah.
But a very good advice, Mr. Bawa. Thank you for that. Mrs. Amyot, it's not a secret that automation, digitalization, and labor-saving technologies are generating, but also eliminating jobs. Please give us your views on possible employment opportunities for the youth in STEAM.
Okay, in fact, STEAM is opening a number of jobs. It's not only opening jobs in science, in technology, but it's also opening jobs everywhere, including in arts, because you can use, in fact, technology in arts. You can use technology even in culinary arts nowadays. What's happening is that you have, when you think about jobs, you have to think about jobs are being created now. Every day, there are new ways of doing things that had not been envisaged before. For me, the best example is an electrician. Before, an electrician didn't need so much technology per se, but nowadays, if they don't know how to function with internet, because everything is linked to internet, you won't be able to function. One of the things that I think is important in our discussion today, I know that Alexis earlier talked about the continuous learning. For me, one of the things that is very important is to ensure that when we talked about continuous learning, the way to push it, the way to develop curiosity is in fact by putting people of multidisciplinary team together so that they can learn from each other and they can push each other. And when you talk about the jobs, we cannot leave people behind. We can, because vulnerable people need to be part of those jobs of tomorrow. So education system have a responsibility, in fact, to ensure that they are part of this. And there are various ways that we can do that. I know that us in Canada, what we do with our training, we have wraparound services to ensure that people can be educated and have the skills required. We even do pre-technology program. We offer different introductions to different trades, for example, or different professions during a week. We have trucks that go in different places with different types of job in it so that people can do hands-on and have experience with it. But the most important thing for me is inclusion. It's upskilling, also never stop learning.
Thank you, Ms. Amyot. There is a good question from the audience. I think I'd hand it over to you, Mr. Hess, because it's about Swissmem. It says the biggest issue facing the manufacturing sector is a war for talent. How does Swissmem support the Swiss industrial companies to remain competitive in the long term?
It's probably the most strategic subject, I would say, that I'm thinking of.
Yeah.
Because, you know, we have a demographic change, which is really a big challenge. In the next 5 years, in my country, 100,000 skilled people will go into retirement, and only 25 come from youth. So we'll have a big delta and a big challenge. Yeah. Obviously, we focus on education, on making our industry attractive, on attracting youth. But I think we have recently seen that this may not be enough to focus on youth. And we see through digitization on one hand, but also through the structural changes that this pandemic will bring, that there will be people who will be in jobs which are not needed anymore or not to the same extent. And the opportunity for us is, how can we bring these people who may currently work in tourism or work in transportation or work somewhere where it's not needed anymore because it's automated, how can we bring these people, who are people between 40, 50, 60 years of age, how can we bring them into those jobs that we are currently lacking? How can we fill the holes that are there, the 75,000 people? And we have invented a program which we call MEM Passerelle 4.0. It's kind of a bridge. It's meant to be a bridge from an existing job which is no longer in demand into a new job which is in demand, and allow those people to cross, the adult people, not young people, adult people, 30, 40, 50-year-old, 60-year-old people, to cross that bridge in a manner of 1 to maximum 2 years and finish this with a certification and be ready for those jobs that are in demand, and make the whole labor market more flexible, more adaptable to these dramatic and fast changes ahead. And we've just started this program. I don't know where it's going, but I hope this is going to make a big contribution, not only for us to win the war of talent, but also for people that do not have jobs because of digitization and pandemic and other things that may come. How can we bring them back into areas where there is jobs that actually are attractive jobs with a future?
So this is lifelong learning.
It's very much
not
lifelong
only in
learning,
school,
yes, yes,
also
yes.
for adults.
Yes.
Yeah, an exciting topic, an exciting theme that will, be important for
and
the next years.
And we're very glad that the government in Switzerland, Mr. Widmer and Hirayama, they're all supporting us. So I think it should be a big thing, and I really look forward to that.
Great, thank you for sharing these insights. Mr. Bawa, one more question. The industry continues to have difficulties in finding and recruiting young professionals with a STEAM background. How can Goodwall, a network which aims to connect young people with college and employment opportunities, help by accessing STEAM talents?
Yeah, thanks so much. I think, again, coming back down to that element or that analogy of a funnel, when we talk about some of these industries where there are shortages, we need to position, and a lot of work is being done, but we need to position that first of all, let the next generation know that the opportunities are out there, that these career paths are out there, and then make those particular career paths exciting. So we focus a lot on not just employer branding, but industry and career branding. And we do that by offering corporates and organizations tools to be able to do that and to position themselves with the values of this next generation. So for example, here in Switzerland, we worked and we're working with the government on entrepreneurship challenges for the next generation. So we call this the Swiss Futurepreneur Challenge, and we work on helping youth develop that entrepreneurship spirit, even if they don't become entrepreneurs. We do know that whether it's the largest companies here or the smallest companies here, we do need that ability from the next generation to not just do a task, but also help sometimes reinvent some of these companies that are going through the second, third generation as well, and the larger companies that are trying to transform how they behave. So we're doing that. And then on the company side and on the organization side, beyond employer branding, we then, when there is interest, we then help connect the right people to the right organization. So we again look at it not as a transaction. Leveraging technology, we're able to look at this as more of a journey. And we're able to do this in a cost-effective way to kind of connect the right people to the right opportunities. And one of the big challenges is, most really talented people want to go to a very few select group of organizations. And even those organizations may not necessarily be attracting the ones that they really want. And so when we're talking about young talent, it's about the right fit. And that's where, employer branding in particular, associating with the right values, whether it be, we talked about the environment, we talked about the inclusivity, and here I talked about entrepreneurship, is so important from a branding perspective. Organizations, and even those organizations.
Thank you. One more question for you, Mr. Georgacopoulos. ECAL is recognized as globally for its prestige educational program and also for the partnerships with famous brands like IKEA, BMW, and so on. Can you give us an example on a case how ECAL empowered students to solve environmental challenges for the private sector?
Yes, I mean, it's not just for the private sector directly, first of all. We have also, I mean, self-initiated projects which are going through the environmental, let's say, goals. For example, we did a project right now, very recently, which is called Aesthetics of Sustainability, and actually questions, first of all, and then gives as much as possible answers to different materials and different production techniques which have to do with sustainable materials. Let's say we started from the point that for many years the sustainability and all these new materials had more or less always aesthetically a very clear identity, and we wanted them not to differentiate them anymore from all the other more traditional materials, but really to give them a new value, an added value in terms of design and, of course, function and production techniques. So we involved a series of students and also researchers in that project, which took place a year ago, more or less, and now it will be produced publicly. We'll do a book and also website presenting all these things, and all the projects are linked with companies. So it's not just, we didn't invent a new material, we work with existing materials, but through the perspective of design and also the young generation, we gave them a new purpose, a new, let's say, outlook, which I think will also raise a new awareness on how people let's say, act and react to these materials. And on the other side also, we have been, all the collaborations we do with, let's say, with major companies are always, let's say, taken always into account sustainability issues, be it, you know, appliances or smaller objects, everyday life objects. So it's something which I think a school and also young designers must always take into account. It's extremely important as an issue to raise every day.
Thank you. Yeah, we already come to the end of our panel. I have one question that I'd like to hand over to all of you, only for a few sentences maybe. Mr. Bawa, maybe I start with you. If you had one wish for STEAM education, how would that wish look like for the future?
Oh man, that's a tough one. One wish. Yeah, I think just giving as much support as we can. You know, there's so many different pieces, but yeah, we need to come together as a society, and it can't just be left to the next generation. So, as much governmental support as we can to help on this journey. Thank you,
Mrs. Amyot. Your wish for STEAM education and the young generation.
So my wish is access to STEAM. My wish is inclusion in STEAM. And my final wish is to ensure that we introduce applied research in the college system, that we do not have applied research only in universities. Because I think it allows people to work together and solve real problems, real challenges.
Thank you, Mrs. Amyot. Mr. Hess, how should the future of STEAM education look like if your wish would come true?
We would have 5 times more girls and ladies involved in technical and scientific jobs. And I think this is crucially important for Switzerland to really win the war for talent and have the skilled people, because if we remain a man-oriented world in our industry, we will not find the talent that we need for the future, and we will also lack the diversity that this gender diversity actually adds to the world. So my biggest wish is, hopefully we'll be able to excite more girls and young ladies to study a profession which is based on the STEAM education.
And curiosity is the key, and creativity. Mr. Georgacopoulos, how does your wish look like?
I mean, I would say all the above, but as much as possible, make the A bigger.
A perfect ending for our panel talk, in my opinion. Thank you so much to all the panelists. Mrs. Amyot, Mr. Bawa, Mr. Hess, Mr. Georgacopoulos, thank you very much for giving us a look into your thoughts, for your experiences that you shared with us in the last minutes. Thank you for being part at Future Talk 2020. All the best to you. Stay safe, stay healthy, and hopefully till next year, all together in one event. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Ladies and gentlemen, we will have a break, a coffee break of around about 45 minutes. We go on at 3:45 with the second panel of today. Take the time maybe to visit our futuretalk.org website to get all information about our speakers, all information about our panelists. Visit the website. If you want to share your thoughts and your statements with the people on social media, please use the hashtag FutureTalk2020. We're back in around about 40 minutes. I hope you are there. See you later and stay tuned. Thank you very much.
the learning process has been constructed in a classroom through the synchronized activity of the teacher and the student. When the learner is seen as an active participant and the learning environment as a larger area than just a classroom, the learning process becomes at least partially asynchronous. Mobile devices and digitalization provide new kinds of opportunities for interaction, information building, and sharing. This way, learning is not about studying alone, but learning together. I strongly believe that the future of hybrid learning is made in Finland. So why do I believe in this? Let me quickly give you 3 reasons for this. First, Finland is the top country to see the future of education and pedagogy. Secondly, Finland ranks as number 2 in integration of digital technology. Thirdly, Finland has world's 4th highest university-industry collaboration in R&D. But as we sometimes tend to say, Finland is not a country, it is a country club. Therefore, a genuine collaboration with Worlddidac has been and will be truly important, not only for our educational technology company members, but now also increasingly for our academic sector. As Worlddidac is where education comes together, and as Finland is the place where the future of hybrid learning will be made. This is why Finland and Worlddidac is a match made in heaven. My name is Juha Merinen, and I am the founder and CEO of Smart Internationalization and a member of the Worlddidac Council. Thank you for listening, and let us all inspire the education worldwide.
Hello there, my name is Miriam Bonilla, Chief Commercial Officer from Edison. Hello there, my name is Miriam Bonilla. Hello there, my name is Miriam Bonilla, Chief Commercial Officer from Edison International. We are Platinum member from Worlddidac Association, and I'm also a member from the Worlddidac Council. Worlddidac Association is an inclusive organization with all parts of the educational sector in all countries, with the main mission of developing synergies and opportunities for its members, where education comes together. That's why at Edison, we believe that Future Talk is already an important place to share and talk about education. As a member of Worlddidac, we want to thank the creation of this space and give it the value that it deserves. It facilitates access to those who can't attend in person, demolishing the barriers of distance and increasing accessibility to people from all over the world. That's causing new business opportunities, new projects, or the opening of new markets. In these unstable and uncertain times, it is important to stick together and to feel the support among us. Education has to be a common good, and this implies that everyone must have an active and committed role in their favor. Either they are governments, international financial institutions, private sector, or social agents. It's truly important to listen to the proposal that each of us has to offer. We are sure that in them we will find solutions in favor of education, and we will be able to contribute in this way to achieving the Sustainable Development Goals proposed by the United Nations. The learning and teaching methods that are emerging in the 21st century must instill in students a critical thinking and search to creative solutions. It is also necessary that they promote an equal participation of both genders, thereby causing inclusive society and economy. Future Talk 2020 covers key discussion topics that are on the rise of the development of a better education. Among them, they are STEM, science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematics. Green education, to overcome environmental challenges in a systematic way. Artificial intelligence, digital innovation, concepts like Internet of Things, Industry 4.0, big data, all these concepts have to be introduced in the classroom. The world is changing fast, so education sector has to follow that change quickly. With the sum of these important factors, we will begin by developing quality and inclusive education. Thanks to Future Talk, we will be able to nourish each other with new ideas and projects. I strongly recommend your participation in this great event hosted by Worlddidac. You will not regret.
Hello there from a virtual world. I am Nader Imani, Vice President of Worlddidac Association. I still remember my schooling, my elementary and primary education, my secondary and so on, my teachers, my schoolmasters, giving their passion in the education of the future. Well, education is always about our future. Decades have passed, and it's time now for me to give back from my 30+ years of professional activities in supporting education community around the world. My 6 years participation as a member of the Worlddidac Council, for the last 4 years serving as the Vice President of the association, represent continuation of my learning path with passionate people and how education could drive our ever-changing life towards progress. Education for all shouldn't be a buzzword, but a real objective that we shall all aim to reach. The world is changing, so it is education demand. That's why education supply should be in a permanent, perpetual change. We just need to watch how subject matter areas are evolving, given the evolution of EdTech around us. Worlddidac is where education comes together. We stand for a worldwide organization that promotes the entire education supply chain across all 5 continents and 194 countries. Worlddidac is the association to support the dialogue among business, politics, and education, providing all stakeholders a platform for innovation and a genuine value creation.
Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the second half of today's Future Talk. Welcome back also to our guests. We had a short coffee break, and now we go on with our second panel for today. We will talk about this question and more details about how do we inspire future generations to use STEAM education to manage post-pandemic changes. And I have the honor to introduce our 4 panelists, our experts that all of them are joining us via video call. Oh, and there we have our agenda. And here they are, our panelists from the office or the home office. Hello, Beatrice Booth, Chairwoman of the European STEM Coalition. Hello, Mrs. Booth. Also, Günther Koch, the President of Humboldt Cosmos Multiversity. I say hi to Paolo Dal Santo, HP Education Lead EMEA at HP International.
Good afternoon.
And Ms. Lieselot van Geisel, STEM Educator and EU Ambassador at GTI Beveren.
Hi, everyone.
Hi. So we can hear you, we can see you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
A bit of delay, but that's okay. We have some time. So thanks to all of you for taking time, being part of our Future Talk. A very interesting topic we'd like to focus on in the next 45 minutes. And maybe I start with the first question that I'd like to hand over to Mrs. Boots. So Mrs. Boots, there is no universally accepted definition of STEAM. One say it's the link between STEM and creativity, where the A stands for arts, and others say it's for all other subjects. How should STEAM education be defined from your perspective, from the perspective of the EU STEM Coalition?
Hi, nice to be here. First of all, let me explain shortly what is the EU STEM Coalition.
Yes.
It's a coalition of all kinds of STEM platforms. I'm from the Dutch STEM, National STEM Platform. And there are many platforms like this in Europe, and they all try to promote STEM for young people and older students to choose it, so companies have more people in that area. And so it's a network of and a platform of all kinds of STEM organizations from all across Europe. And this is actually an issue where we talk about a lot, because some people are very strict to keep it STEM. Some people want to make it STEAM, and then is the A arts or is the A all other subjects? That's where our Belgium partners came up with. And what I found is that the real engineering people, the real STEM people say, well, STEM in itself is already very creative. It is about design. It is about making new things, and it could be quite theoretical, it could be more in the making, but so we don't need the A, because STEM in itself is arts enough or creativity enough. But I think when we discuss this a lot with the European Commission, who now talk about STEAM, I think there are a lot of policymakers in Brussels who think, well, with a history background or with another background, you're not involved or something. So maybe the discussions comes from there. But I don't really mind personally whether it's STEAM or whether it's STEM. I think it's important that mathematics, engineering, technology, that students know that they need these skills in order to be successful in the future. And that it is a good idea to combine it with all the other areas that there are there. And ICT, for instance, is also very important, which it's not in the STEM, it's not in the STEAM. So should we put another letter to it? I don't know. So I know it's a discussion. For me personally, doesn't mind, as long as we know that the STEM subjects are very important for a lot of things that we need, the students need as skills in the future.
Mr. Koch, what is your point of view concerning the A from STEM to STEAM? How did the A enter this concept in your opinion?
Well, let me step back to an experience I had as a professor in a technical university and was teaching system engineering, system construction, for example. And this was in a way, it was a STEM approach, meaning a classical approach, using all the science and technology and engineering, mathematics, etc. And at that time, I was introducing I was referring to a book from two gentlemen called Maturana and Varela, which was called The Tree of Knowledge. And this was very fascinating to me firsthand. And interestingly enough, when I was meeting my students 25 years later, and I asked them what they remember most, it was exactly this reference, and it was not the technology and not the pieces by which we build complex systems. Now, I found out that the model of, of biology, which is then reflected in technology by bionic systems, for example, was so much fascinating that because they understood that mastering complexity is the issue. Now, mastering complexity means it's more than just putting things together in a Lego style. It's more also to be innovative. And this momentum of innovativeness, this exactly makes the difference, I think, from STEM to STEAM, whatever the A is interpreted. But the point is that for the mastering the very complex issues, and we are entering a historic phase where, let's say, the so-called grand challenges like the climate change, etc., need a certain intellectual potential to handle it. There you need more than just putting things together. And this is the point I want to make in respect to the A in STEAM, that this is exactly, let's say, the thinking process which makes the difference.
Thank you. Mr. Da Santo, what are the skills needed to support a real STEAM approach?
So first of all, thank you for having me and HP joining this forum today. And thank you also for the contribution from the previous panelists. The STEAM approach is, I would say, very wide, and you can actually approach from different angles. I would take the approach from more on the business and skills side, because I believe that's an important one. Ultimately, all our effort in training, in vocational training, in learning and teaching as well, it's as well focused on skills and skills for the future. And I would say there are two blocks of skills which I would consider as really important. The first one is the approach on problem solving and making sure that this trying to find creative way for resolving a solution, a science issue, or a simply practical problem that you need to tackle. It's one important area of skills. The second one is for sure collaboration and communication, especially today. Think about this remote conference we are having today, and all the schools were working remotely. So the collaboration and cooperation remotely and face-to-face is another important one. Overall, if you take the famous A in STEAM, I would also try to focus on what is an important one for me, which is empathy. Try to understand the other whenever you are discussing on technical or science or even kind of social matters, especially in these days where empathy and understanding the other is a key important trait when you want to kind of help the community of learners you're in. So the sum of the three, in my opinion, are really the key important ones. So collaboration, problem solving, and empathy. And this is probably a good area that covers both primary and secondary school, but as well when you move up to university. So it's a good mix of the three, in my opinion.
Great. Mrs. Van Geisel, you as a woman chose the STEAM education when it is even dominated by men. Can you share your experiences with us in that context?
Yes, I can. Since I was a kid, I couldn't keep still, and I always wanted to know how things function. So that's why I took things apart. It fascinated me, and it still does. But all my friends in primary school went to a different high school, but I wanted to follow my passion. So that's why I chose a technical study, and in 2012, I graduated with a degree in electromechanics. I was the only girl in my class. Sometimes I wish that there were other girls in my class that I could talk to about stuff like makeup or love problems, mainly because the boys in my class weren't very interested in these things. So one day we had to present our thesis to our classmates' parents. it turned out that the moms were very concerned about me. They were afraid that their sons wouldn't behave, but luckily they were wrong. And the boys, their sons, were very kind to me. I was like one of the boys. So when I went to college, I studied engineering. And only 5 out of the 150 students were girls. But engineering wasn't my calling, so I changed my studies to become a teacher in mechanics and electricity. And once again, I was the only girl in my class. I graduated 3 years ago. In Flanders, in 2012, when I graduated in high school, only 1% in the electromechanics were girls. In industrial science, only 4%. Last school year, in electromechanics, this went up to 2%. And in industrial science, it went up to 6.5%. So in the last years, there hasn't been a big change. Because of the low amount of girls I had encountered in my classes, I decided to make a study about the numbers of girls in vocational education studies and the reason behind it. So for this research, I asked 2,000 students and 150 teachers why they think girls do not choose a technical study. And these are the top 3 answers I get. Number 1, some girls are not interested in these studies. And I'm like, okay, I can understand that because everyone has a different passion and that's good. Mm-hmm. Number 2, the parents do not allow it. So the parents do not allow it. Why do parents do that? Because as a parent, don't you want to see your child happy? So why do you keep her away from her passion? I can understand that the parents are afraid of the unknown because not many girls do a STEM study. And some of the parents think that the boys will eat their daughter, but that's not true because look at me, I'm still alive. So I was very lucky that my parents supported me in my decision to do a STEM study. Number 3, some girls are afraid of other people's reaction. A few girls do not do a technical course because they do not like the gossip or the questions such as, why did you pick that course? Isn't that for boys? And I get that because I get that question many times and I'm like, why can't I do that course? I'm a woman, so I can do that. It's not only for boys. But also some girls are afraid that some of her friends may ditch her because she does something different than all the rest. So that's why when I saw the outcome of my research, I contacted the Minister of Education because we need to do something about this. And that's how I became the first STEM ambassador of Flanders. And as an ambassador, I promote vocational education because it's study for girls and boys. And I want to become a role model, to share my story with other people. In my high school, we have 1,000 students, but we only have 25 girls. I'm also the only female teacher in mechanics, but we also have a female teacher in electricity. And that's kind of unique in Belgium to have multiple female technical teachers. When I was looking for a job, most people had a hard time believing that I was a teacher in mechanics and I had a degree in electromechanics. Why? Because I wasn't a boy. And I was shocked to hear that because, in my opinion, everyone can do every job because jobs don't have a gender. So my experience is good, but that it can be better.
How can we change that? How can we change that in the mind of the people? And maybe because you said you felt pressure from other people saying, why do you study that? Why is this question still existing?
It's because of the gender stereotypes. And it begins early at birth, it begins because we have the birth cards and it's always blue or green for the boys and pink or purple for the girls. And then you have toys. The packaging is also red or purple or pink for the girls and blue or green for the boys. So we divide these toys without being aware of it. And you can see it at toy shops. So we have to do a lot to change that. So we can start with making unisex packaging and put dolls next to cars and trains so that a child can choose any toy he or she wants without a link to gender.
So we have to start earlier by changing that in the minds of everybody, of the parents, of the grandparents, of teachers, and so on. But what is, in your opinion, a solution for that problem, for encouraging girls to study?
We don't have to make a difference between girls and boys because they can learn from each other. But in primary school, we have a day called Professions Day, where the parents can show what kind of job they do. And in my time, it was a female nurse and a male military, but why not a female firefighter or a male hairdresser? We must give our children role models, someone they can look up to. And an example, Ada Lovelace is the first computer programmer, or Stephanie Kolek invented the fabric of bulletproof vests. When I was little, I didn't know there were female inventors because my teachers always talked about the male inventors. There are also books like Mechanica. It's a Cinderella story about a girl that is an inventor, or That Girls Are Superheroes. That's a comic book that's about female heroes at night, but during the day they have a technical job. We also have movies like Wonder Woman, Hidden Figures. We can also give more information to the parents, what STEAM studies offer and what uses they have in the future. And that the studies are also for girls and not only for boys. And we can do that to make every technical school girl-friendly. Why? Because in Belgium, not every school has a female toilet or a female changing room. And once the parents see this, they will not send their daughter to that school. And then we can also organize introduction days so that the boys and girls that are interested in a technical study can see for themselves what the course is like, how the school is, how the students are, and maybe they can make something during that time so they can show that at home to their parents. And then we have to do more internships with companies because students learn extra skills and learn about their future possibilities at that company. We have only an internship in the 6th year, but why not in the 5th year? So that they have 2 years of internships. I teach my students the basic skill of mechanics. So their first workpiece this year was a name tag. And as a guideline, I give them a technical drawing. However, the aesthetics, they can adjust it. Why? I want that the students find their workpiece beautiful, and I don't matter. If I don't like it, it doesn't matter because it's his or her workpiece. And some of my coworkers don't allow this kind of freedom, and I think that's a shame. Another example, I also teach my students the basic skill of a lathe and a milling machine. And as a project this year, they have to make a bicycle, but they can choose any bicycle they want to make. They only have to show us a picture what they want to create. And after my approval, they just have to make a technical drawing. And after that, they can just start making it. Last school year, some students made a tractor, a racing car, a truck, a monster truck, a military vessel, and etc. And the students are very proud of themselves. And if students are proud and excited about something they made, then I'm a very happy teacher. That's all I want, that my students are happy to be in my class and to be happy that they teach something, they learn something.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences with us, Mrs. Van Geisel. A very important thing to cope with. Thank you very much. Mrs. Boots, the COVID-19 pandemic has caused a great shift towards digital means of delivering education. What are the highest priorities for education providers in relation to this shift?
Well, I think what we see now is that not all schools and not all teachers are ready for this digital shift. So I think one of the things we should do, and maybe that also is something in relation to what Lieselot just said, because her personal experiences is something which we try to tackle in a more structural way, is that we have to professionalize teachers. Usually teachers, they do their subject very well, but they're not used to use ICT, for instance, or to make students enthusiastic for STEM. And I think what we try to do is with the STEM subjects, we always try to make sure there's more context given to STEM education. And we basically, or usually do that with tech companies or other companies. And so I think for this companies also like HP can do something very useful for schools and especially for teachers. So they become more experienced with the use of digital skills, digital literacy, so in a digital education. And I think we should do this in a more structural way. So because otherwise some groups will lag behind and will not be able to keep up with the changes we are now going through. So STEM and especially ICT can be a big support to cover this, to cope with this crisis at the moment. And also teach more STEM related subjects. And I think in that way we can make a lot of more young people ready for the future. But what we always try to do is make sure that schools, education and companies work better and more together, and that the government is also supporting this. We call it the triple helix. So these three actors are very important, and they should work together in order to get more in contact with children on the STEM approach. Maybe HP Paolo Del Santo can say something about it, because I think companies like he is representing are very important in this.
Mm-hmm. Did you mention now that, sorry?
No, please go ahead, go ahead.
You can add something, I'm happy about that, please. This is your stage.
No, I mean, I like the two topics there. One on the role models, on female and women role model. That's an interesting one, because what we normally observe is that I'm covering a very wide kind of territory, including the traditional Western Europe, but as well Africa. And we do see the role of women and girls very, very important, not just because they are the ones who are normally, in some way more adaptive, and they bring also more responsibility. So making sure they have a right role model about science and technology is a very, very important one. And the other comment, and I brought it down, about teachers and scaling, because that's the other portion. HP, as we are of course a for-profit organization, but we have an HP Foundation, which is a non-profit arm. It was founded by our two founders in the 50s. And one of these areas is especially training and learning. And we have an online platform called HP Life. And this training platform is as well focused for all learners, but teachers have a very, very important one on use of technology. I mean, we are not advocating the use of technology just to place something in a classroom, but actually the effective use of technology with a learning outcome. And then, of course, linked to the SDG 4, where HP has also made a pledge. So I think the scaling on skills on girls and women on technical and science topic, and the teachers focus. And let's also remember very clearly that kind of composition of teachers, the female portion, a mix, is normally very high. So they could also be the role model for their students. The collaboration with private and public, that's also the other important area where HP has been also very active, both with United Nations organization, but also with others. So the overall message is very close to our mission overall, and also collaborating locally with organizations, not just organizations like UN Women or something which runs locally. That's also very, very important. So more than open to see and to explore together. And last is, the interesting point is the discussion about Belgium We are not discussing about difficult other environments. In Belgium, you still see this kind of limit about girls learning science and STEAM. So I think there is a lot of other areas where we can increase and improve this visibility across Europe and the wider Middle East and Africa as well. So very, very interesting and very relevant to that.
Mr. Dal Santo, oh yes, Mr. Koch, please add something. Thank you.
A very short secondment what has been said before, because evidently Lieselot raised a discussion which is very important and very interesting. I have been running a software company for many years, which I had founded. And just to report that the first insight I got was when the balance of gender was more or less 50-50. The company was in a perfect state in terms of the culture of the company and the corporation. Second, maybe this is an argument to Lieselot and you, that the profile of cooperators in a company like a software company, which I ran, or a system engineering company, you could say, is not just only that you need a technical background. Most of the work is you apply methodologies like, let's say, the product cycle technologies, or anyway, what I want to say is that the communication between those who create systems needs another quality and another ability, namely to get people in discussion, to get people in communication. And I found out that when you have girls or ladies in the team, this works much, much better, because they can apply their ability of interpersonal communication and increase in fantasy, increase in having new ideas and innovation, etc. So what I want to say is, if you want to go for an advertisement for getting female employees, you shouldn't address that you are looking for blue collar or that type of people, rather than the ones who have a qualification in just these fields which are urgently needed in order to create good systems.
Thank you. Mr. Koch, one more question that I'd like to hand over to you. Could you share your experimental experience with us, or are you planning to have an experimental experience in order to introduce STEAM in an, let's say, educational landscape?
Well, there you address another experience. I am currently heading, it's called Multiversity. It's a discourse platform which is located in Tenerife. So this might sound like a specific case, but if you are looking to the geography of the Canary Islands, being very close to Africa, we developed the ideas over the last years on if this geographical position could be used in order to have a long-term strategy for educating not only the people living there, rather than those people living in the African continent. And so we started in cooperation with Festo, Didactic, a project on spot, which was more or less introducing STEAM, or first-hand STEM. And we are now in the process in turning it into STEAM with teachers and professors at the university, as well as in high schools in this place. What is the strategic idea behind that? To educate people which can educate other people. So we will, and that is decided, invite African professors, teachers, to come to our place in order to learn about STEAM. What we did is we introduced STEAM by using the educational sets of Festo, the bionic sets, and we ran workshops, or one specific big workshop with some 25 professors. And this was also another experience that they liked to play with these things. They really enjoyed it. Now, I think the motivation was very high. Sorry, we are desperate because of the COVID situation, and we had an interrupt since that event over many months now, and we are restarting the whole thing. And The restart currently, and if you're interested in looking it up, I can send you the access information. We call for an ideas workshop. Why this? If you are looking to places like the Canary Islands, you will discover that the economic situation there is an absolute disaster. They have more or less reduced their economy from where they live at 80% from tourism to zero. It's just recovering a little bit, but the situation of the old normal will never be the new normal. Now, so we are interested in knowing what is the perspective for the young generation. So we launched a call very recently, it's still ongoing, in cooperation with Didactic, in hopefully earning ideas from a young generation, from students, how they imagine how the future could be. Because places like this, they cannot continue in the old mode. And there, the hope is that the fantasy, which is behind STEAM, could open up some kind of ideas with young people, how their future could be designed. So that is a little bit of experience. If you'd like to know more, I could tell you a lot of stories about that.
Thank you. Maybe if we have some more time, I will come back to that. I would love to hear the experiences too of Mr. Dal Santo. You just mentioned the public and private sector collaborations in skills development. Could you give us more examples for that?
Sure. Connecting back to what Gunther was saying, HP has a long-standing collaboration with a lot of UN organizations and governments. And one of these initiatives, so we're working with UNIDO, which is the United Nations Industrial Development Organization, and together as well with Festo and others, we have developed a project, for example, which is called Mashroi, which is my project in Tunisia, which is exactly in training and helping the young entrepreneur to build up their own business. And it goes exactly in that area. So it's not just the theoretical generic skills, but it goes into areas like developing your business plan, your marketing activities. How do you get funds? How do you prepare your online visibility? And that's a good example of collaboration with organizations which are fully non-profit and as well local entrepreneur. On the same time, if I take another continent, we have signed what is called a memorandum of understanding with the African Union. And all these activities are targeted at training and helping teachers and local institutions on the use of technology in the classroom. It covers both primary and secondary, and as well on higher education. I just want, instead of just listing this kind of activities, and I will put the links on the YouTube, I think the most important topic for me is there is synergies possibly between the private sector and the public governments and non-profit and UN organization, because one, there are common goals, and ultimately both society benefits and helps this, so following the SDG goals, but as well there is a possibility of scaling, which is much bigger, but with very, very strong regulations and rules in place, which help private business. This is a full end-to-end approach. If we have the right skills at schools, the right training, the right organization, locally, who knows how this is done? It's not just the language, it's the way this is shared. Why in a classroom there are only boys coming and not girls? How can we influence them? Ultimately, a workforce which will come into the job market, which will be ultimately somebody who starts up their business, will benefit back as well private companies. So HP really looks at this end-to-end holistically from both sustainability and people and planet at the end. So it's wide, and we try really to involve local players. So I really like the project in the Canaries. And of course we have I like the Belgium one with a kind of role model of kind of technical and STEAM one. And I'm sure there will be interesting collaboration in the future together, for sure.
Thank you. Mrs. Boots, let's focus on the new Digital Education Action Plan that the USM Coalition has rolled out. Can you tell us more about the primary priorities and its objectives?
Well, the digital plan is not actually our plan. It's a plan of the European Commission, but the Commission asked the European STEM platform to have a role in that, because we already have platforms in all the countries, and also more regional and more locally. As also Mr. Del Santo said, you really have to be locally or regionally and work at this from the bottom up, because that's where the people have to do it. And the schools already have to take care of a lot of subjects, and STEM is usually a subject they do not find very easily. So then it's very useful that public and private can cooperate and work together, and that is exactly what we do. So our role is to make sure that the goals of the European Commission on the digital agenda comes to schools and the partnerships in the regions with companies quicker, because nobody reads those big reports. And we really try to bring them into action. What can you do to improve on the digital skills? What kinds of good practices are there? How can you cooperate with companies or other partners? Do we have good role model approaches? Because we know that this is working. We share a lot of research that we do in all of our countries, and we share them among each other. So we do the good things and the right things that are really helping this issue. And for instance, there has been done a lot of research on how we could interest girls. For instance, role models is a good example. Make sure that they have a better idea of future jobs. I think most children in schools and their parents and also the teachers have no idea what kind of interesting jobs there are at HP. And now I call HP all the time, but the same goes for a lot of other big companies. And also, what are the jobs at the SMEs, at the smaller companies? People usually don't find that very attractive because they have no idea. And we found in our research that one of the most important things that children do not choose STEM or STEAM is they have no idea of the jobs. What kind of job, what am I going to do in the future with it? And so that's why it's so important that companies and schools together with government, locally and regional, are working and cooperating together. And we can do that everywhere in Europe. And you see now where the regions with the older industries are now changing towards a digital agenda. And in this way, in these regions, it's extra more important to have the policies of the European Commission there very quickly. And since we are a platform and a network of cooperating organizations already, hopefully we can start quicker and move faster with this digital agenda. And that's the role also in communication that we have.
Thank you. I just received another question for you, Mrs. Boots, from our audience, so perfect. Is PTVT open to collaborate with private companies from the UK to increase motivation in students to learn STEM? Just arrived.
Well, we do have a UK partner, since we are also working together with the European Commission. In the UK, people don't want to be part of our Europe anymore. We have to discuss what's possible, but of course we can always exchange ideas and work together. Actually, we do already work together with UK organizations and also companies, and a lot of companies, of course, are not only UK but are very worldwide maybe. So we're happy to work together and have a talk, and maybe just send us an email and we can get in touch. I'll be happy to.
Great, next connection, perfect.
Yes.
Mr. Koch, technology is moving faster. We have to upskill the workforce for Industry 4.0. Why do you think technical and vocational education and training plays an important and significant role?
Well, if I take STEAM as a synonym for, let's say, this kind of competences which we need in the future, I would like to start with again with a little anecdote. When I brought my car to the workshop for repair, the workshop owner, we were talking about apprenticeship and apprentices to be attracted to his business. And he says his big problem is he doesn't need people who know how to use a screwdriver and things like that. He needs people who are able to plug their laptop into the diagnosis plug of the car and interpret what they can read on the screen. What I'm saying is that we are in a situation that I think industry as a whole is getting in small pieces, but nevertheless in a kind of a situation where things are getting immaterialized. Say, we need people in the future who have a certain ability to think abstract, to cope with complex situations, etc. And this is an ability which needs to be developed as early as possible. Meaning I'm confident because young people, meaning children, already start with games on computers. So they start to have a reflection on reality where they can differentiate between what is virtual and what is real. But I think that is an important aspect in future abilities. Why this? Because more and more workplaces will shift from, let's say, the real handcraft type of work towards that, what I said, the abstract and immaterial situation. Just think about in industry about what is called the digital twin, for example. You can completely develop a complex system on your computer before you install it in reality. But this kind of making, this kind of competence development between reality and virtuality, that is something which we will likely see also in developing in situations, as I mentioned before, and Paolo also mentioned, in places which look to be underdeveloped, but in reality, if you take that historical example of, let's say, the telephone infrastructure in Africa, they made a leap jump from, let's say, having nothing towards the mobile telephones, for example. And I think we should be optimistic that this type of development will also happen in places which today look to be underdeveloped, but nevertheless, the basic ability, and that is the point I want to make, is abstract thinking and complex and mastering complex situations. That is the ability which you can't develop as early as possible.
Mr. Dal Santo, it seems that you want to add something. You're nodding. You agree?
Yeah, I do agree with the description, and I like the concept of looking at possible expansion in territories, in areas where we historically believe maybe infrastructure to provide this type of remote training or technical training are not there. But I have two interesting examples. It's one, connectivity speed that will allow, for example, now remote training. So we have a large part of the north part of UK, we have lower connectivity than any Central African country. So geographically and history there, it's less connected. And at the same time, other organizations like UNIDO again have created some training center. It's called LKDF. It's learning and facility trainings across Africa to teach skills which are normally, most of the time, for example, dedicated to only male, and there are females. So it's about technical skill with Volvo, Scania, big earth-moving machines. And in that cases, you have the perfect example because you have the full connectivity, you have an audience who needs that type of skills, even the employer are looking for that type of skills, and you can remotely training with virtual reality, augmented reality. I like the discussion on digital twins, remotely with a teacher, an experienced teacher maybe sitting in Belgium and teaching these students remotely, but being part of the same place. In that case, the infrastructure, the connectivity, the technology layer, it's the same. So it's really down to the policy definition and the objectives of development that a specific country or a region or even a city. We have heard some videos about Helsinki trying to develop as the digital hub or digital city for Europe. So it's really down to each community, city, and government really to push through. And I mean, the contribution for everyone, private and public and non-profit, can really makes a big difference. So it's a great introduction of any future work that could be done. Absolutely.
Thank you. I would like to hand over one last question to all of you. Mrs. van Geisel, maybe we start. What is your most urgent development you want to see in the new normal? Oh, we can't hear you.
I think I want to see more women, ladies at STEM jobs. In my school, we have in 3 years come from 11 girls to 25, but I want to see that in the future to 50, to 100, to 200, 500, because companies and we need more ladies at technical jobs, because they have also talent that we can use. So I hope that we can see more ladies at the technical jobs.
Great. Mrs. Boots, what's the most urgent development for the new normal?
Well, in our situation, we have been quite successful to have more students in STEM in higher education, but still in vocational education, it's still a challenge. Also, the girls lag a lot behind there. So more STEM students or STEAM students in vocational education, and I think public-private partnerships there are very important. So that's where we focus on.
Mr. Dal Santo, what are your thoughts? Can you share them with us?
I think the key outcome of what we discussed today, at least on my side, it's we need a wider collaboration. I mean, historically, private and public companies, profit and non-profit, were considered like two opposite sides and with kind of different directions. The picture has changed for not just for HP, of course I'm happy to represent today, but all the biggest player in the IT and in other sectors. So this strong collaboration is there. Most of the time, private companies are not expert in that areas. They might master in their own business, their own areas. So I would say collaboration between private and public, and also bringing visibility about local needs, which ultimately will benefit us. So it's really, I will really stress again on collaboration and working together openly, sometimes only to make a connection. Sometimes that's also my role. It's enabling connections between different entities, company or private companies, not even having HP contributing directly or participating, but that's also my role as a connector between these two worlds. So I think this is the most important thing I would take out from the call today and the conference.
Thank you. Mr. Koch, what do we need to manage post-pandemic change?
Well, I think the new normal will certainly not be the old normal, and we even don't know how long it will take until we have a new situation. When I take the example which I mentioned before, and Paolo also has taken on the, let's say, less developed parts of the world, I would say that infrastructures of cooperation, which are virtual and digital, are certainly taking much more space and much more place than ever before. We are just now sitting together in a setting of 5 people through a conference, virtual conference system, which is an example. I'm exercising with other people some virtual settings where you can, let's say, meet together by representations of avatars, meaning representations of real people by virtual or by artificial people. I'm not saying that I'm looking for, let's say, a good, the bright future in technology. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that this will happen anyway. The infrastructures of this type will emerge. What we need in these new infrastructures is a new way of how to cooperate and how to maintain that human and personal interchange as we try now, which and certainly we experience now that this is not the best way to do it. We rather would have better met in Bern, in Switzerland, in a personal way. But as I said, there's in my perspective, we need to have that hybrid situation where we need to meet sometimes because personal meetings are very, very important because you get much more information of a person by body language, mimics, etc. But you also have to see forward that the world will become different, and also, and this is the point I want to make again and again, that for underdeveloped parts of the world, this is a big opportunity to get entered in the business which we are accustomed to, and we in the high developed area are exercising day by day. We need to get these people embarking on our way of doing business.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for this interesting panel. Thanks for sharing your experiences, your thoughts with us, with our audience. Thanks for being part of Future Talk 2020. All the best to you. And hopefully till next time, all together on one live event. That would be my wish. Thank you very much, and bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.
I'd like to hand over to our CEO from Worlddidac Association for some closing remarks. Time flies. We're already at the end of today's event of our Future Talk 2020 Day 1. And I hand over to Danny Gauch.
Well, a big thank you to Doro for the moderation, and a big thank you to all the participants who have given us their insight and answered our critical questions, but also those from the public. We believe that today's sessions have definitely proven that there is much room for discussion, and that in such a short time, you can really only scratch the surface, and actually you can't even make a little dent. However, we do expect that the discussions will now continue, the dialogues will continue, and if I could just throw out some of the points which I've taken out of this, STEM and STEAM can be brought in conjunction with almost everything of life, almost every aspect of life. There's a relationship between science, technology, engineering, arts, mathematics. And if I take some words which I would believe are also a quintessence of today, I think empathy, understanding, inclusion, those are also some things which I will be taking home. But going back now to the individual presentations and speeches, I would like to say, for example, Unesco, what I took out of it, out of his 4 key aspects which he would like, number 2, really left a mark with me, saying we have to make good use of formal and informal education to allow failure. To be honest, if I look back to my days when I was growing up, not that I'm old, but those were the days, I think things which really remained in my mind were when I made mistakes, because I never wanted to make the mistakes again. So I think this is definitely one of the points which can be followed up with, and I think there are good opportunities within STEAM to provide such a potential. Then if we look at the futurist, Gerd Leonhard, he said clearly with his one diagram that just stayed in my head, where you would see the past, the present, and the future. We have to learn from the past. We have to analyze and measure where we are for the present in order to set milestones for the future and where we want to go. I think STEAM at an early stage strongly helps to open one's mind and understand the interdependencies which enable a sound out-of-the-box thinking. If we take Georg Fischer, Peter Ziswiler, he brought forward that people are at the center of everything, also for a company. And Georg Fischer has this mindset, and the more companies that do this, the better. Continuous learning enables agility in adapting to new challenges. STEAM enables adapting to new challenges. The statement that Georg Fischer continuously reinvent themselves is proven and underlined by this. In my opinion, STEAM at an early phase enables the workforce for precisely that. If we look at the panel, Early Exposure to STEAM Education, Mr. Hess brought forward that innovative solutions require open minds, creativity in conjunction with understanding of interdependabilities. These aspects are definitely something which STEAM can bring forward in a person. the understanding is important. So underlines for me the importance of STEAM. Alexis Georgacopoulos, I'm so sorry for that. Art is an important aspect for out-of-the-box thinking, also underlines again everything we've said until now. Then we have Mr. Taha Bawa, exposure of innovative concepts through their website for everyone to be able to access and gather experiences. Here we're talking again about getting experiences. But the biggest challenge is to get the information out there and make it available. Then Mrs. Denise Amyot from Canada brought forward the green education approach that, for example, innovative approaches to include communities in building this understanding. That's also an innovative approach to get the community involved in the education and get an understanding for the people at an early stage. Which brings me to one point, very interesting, was that Mrs. Amyot is looking to get together with Mr. Bawa, and that connection is what underlines, and this is perhaps a little bit of advertisement for Worlddidac, underlines what Worlddidac is trying to achieve for everybody. We would like to bring education together. So the connection between them has already happened, and that's very positive for us for today. From panel 2, we have the STEAM in the era of digitalization and post-pandemic. From Beatrice Booth, I took over. It doesn't matter if it's in the descriptor A, arts, or not, as long as the whole concepts are integrated. I think this is an important aspect as well. Then from Günter Koch, I made the point of mastering complex issues need certain intellectual processes and capabilities, which is absolutely true. A helps precisely in these processes. Paulo del Santo said that collaboration and cooperation is an important aspect. We believe that this can also be improved through the arts. Arts is communication, it's an expression. So that will definitely also bring forward opportunities. And finally, his 3 points were collaboration, problem solving, and understanding, that's the key point. And this should definitely be part of the aspect of STEAM. Lieselot van Giesel brought forward the importance of STEAM to be taught in school in order to provide the same to all in the same way, regardless of their heritage or gender, which might hinder their participation. And this is absolutely an aspect and underlines the fact that this should be taken up in the education at schools, because there are cultural hindrances, there are personal hindrances, as she brought forward. Females do not necessarily enjoy or are not seen in technical jobs. But is this really the future? We have to think about this and make everything gender neutral, in my opinion. Before I hand back over to Doro Gelmar, I'd like to remind you that we would like to continue this dialogue and therefore ask you to stay in touch with us either via futuretaught.org or worlddidac.org. We are happy to continue the dialogue, bring you together with other people, other stakeholders throughout the educational field, and that's what we would like to do. Thank you very much, and have a nice evening. I hand over to Doro.
Thank you, Danny, for these closing remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, we are at the end of day 1, Future Talk 2020, live from Bern. We hope you enjoyed our panels, our talks, the insights that our experts and panelists shared with us. We have 2 more days to go. Tomorrow we will focus on green education. And on Friday, we will focus on artificial intelligence. We, for sure, also, again, have panelists from all over the world that will join us live here in Bern or via video call who are willing to share their insights together with us. These are the key topics for tomorrow and for Friday. And for sure, we also want, again, the interaction with all of you. So please leave your comments, your statements, and also your questions so we can interact with you. So in our Whova app, we have polls. We had the poll for the last days and also today, and we will now reveal the answers. So check out the Whova app to get all the answers and see if you were right. I'm sure you were. Now I say goodbye to all of you. Hopefully see you tomorrow for the second day of Future Talk. And we want to thank all embassies for preparing takeaway packages for all our guests here live in Bern with national specialties for taking away. So enjoy them. See you tomorrow. Stay healthy and stay tuned. Until tomorrow for Green Education. Bye-bye.